Hi guys. I'm here with Brother Clark, my seminary teacher. He used to work with Northwest Airlines as a flight attendant and a low master for Alaska Airlines. So, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so after my mission, so I served my mission in Japan, and so I spoke Japanese, and then I was, after my mission, I was trying to find a job and decided to try to use my language. So I saw an advertisement to go and interview, and so with Northwest, they were looking for flight attendants, so I went and interviewed there just to try it out because I thought it'd be interesting. And um, they asked me if I spoke any languages. I said yes, I speak Japanese, and they're like, great. So they put me into a room, and another Japanese flight attendant came in and interviewed me in Japanese, and so I was able to talk to her in Japanese. And so after that, went home, and then I got a call, and they offered me the job, and so that's how I started working for
very
Northwest
good.
Airlines. So I worked for them for 4 years, did a lot of trips, um, all over the place, mainly Asia because I spoke Japanese. They put me on a lot of flights. So I was based first out of JFK. So I flew out of JFK mostly in New York. So I lived in Manhattan, and then I transferred to Seattle. Was based out of Seattle.
Okay, it's very
Wow.
So
good.
yeah,
So
Oh,
speaking a second language,
yeah.
that's very
it's
good.
very
I
important.
I speak a little Japanese. Like I say, konnichiwa, that's hello in Japanese.
Good.
And yogo so Haneda, that's welcome to Tokyo Haneda Airport.
Nice.
Okay, so I have these questions.
Okay.
How did you start loving aviation?
Probably a lot like you, Robert. When I was a kid, I loved airplanes, and they were my favorite toys. I loved the idea of flight. I lived kind of, we weren't wealthy or anything, but we had a nice view from our house. We lived out in the country in Oregon, and there's just this big valley, and I'd often see like the hawks circling and stuff. So I was fascinated by birds of prey, and I was also fascinated by flight. And one of our scout camps that I would go to had a airport right next to it. So even though you're kind of in the wilderness in the scout camp, there was this hill, and there would always be an airplane up on that hill, and it would, you could watch it take off on the runway. So I always thought airplanes were super cool and fascinating, and so yeah, I just learned to love it. I mean, I loved it so much that when I was in elementary school, I wrote a letter to the head of the Air Force, like I don't know, the top general in the Air Force, and he actually wrote me back. So that was kind of cool.
Wow,
So
Oh, very cool.
yeah, I wanted to be in the Air Force.
that's awesome.
What made you work as a flight attendant with Northwest Airlines?
So again, with that, it was just, I mean, I was looking for a job. So, and I think it matched my personality pretty well. I mean, I think you know, am probably a pretty calm person for the most part. And so, they need people that are kind of like, can be kind of calm and deal with sometimes the stressful, things you deal with in flight,
Yeah.
So that's what kind of got me into it. But I was, very much a minority being a male flight attendant. I mean, most flight attendants are female, but there was, I don't know if you know this fact, but Qantas Airlines in Australia, when they started, the only flight attendants that were allowed were male.
Really?
So only males were allowed to be flight attendants for Qantas for a long time.
Wow.
And then they slowly started allowing females. But the purpose behind that is like they were focused on safety, and they really felt like, they wanted someone to be able to carry passengers out of the plane if they needed to. So it was a physical thing that they needed to pass. It wasn't just about service and stuff like that. But
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Wow.
It's impressive. What is your most memorable memory working in aviation?
I think there's a lot of memories. So just like my mission had a lot of memories, being a flight attendant had a lot of memories, a lot of experiences. But I think for me was doing a military charter. So our military will go, and they will. So we had a lot of soldiers out in Operation Desert Storm. We also had a lot of soldiers out in Somalia during
Mhm.
the Somali conflict, and that was an international effort where we had our military and other militaries that were trying to feed the people who were kind of starving, but there were a lot of warlords and things like that there. But so we had soldiers over there. So I got called up on a Sunday. I was just doing my thing, going to church. Got called up, and they were like, "We need to be at University of Washington in like 2 hours." You know what I mean? And because you're going to need to get shots, and we're going to put you on a military charter to Egypt. So I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So I had to like go to University of Washington and get my yellow fever shot and a bunch of other shots, and then get all my uniform and get everything and rush to the airport. Got to the airport, flew to Minnesota just as a passenger, and got to Minnesota, and then we got onto an empty 747, which was fun. So we got on this empty 747, and we were ferrying the 747 to Egypt. And because it was a military flight, there's no rules. All the American rules for safety and stuff like that don't apply. And so we all took little trays that we serve food on and put them in the aisles. And then on takeoff, as the plane lifted up, we went sliding down the aisles of the 747 down to the back. So that was fun and just exciting. And so we did that for fun. And then we arrived in Mogadishu, and then we arrived in Egypt. I was there a couple of days. Actually went and got to go inside the pyramids. I guess they don't let people in the pyramids anymore, but I was actually able to crawl down inside to the tombs and stuff like that in the pyramids and the Great Pyramid in Giza. So we stayed there. I got really sick, but I think it was from the shot. And then we flew to Mogadishu on this empty plane and then picked up soldiers. And while we were there, they took us on a tour, some of the guys, just because we were going to be there for several hours. They picked us up in a Jeep and then took us around and showed us like the old Somali Air Force planes that were all just kind of like broken down, and just kind of took us on a tour and told us like, about their experience being there. And then we got to go back, and then when we took off, we had all the soldiers in there, and so again it was very different. Like I had to, like contacts were kind of drying out, so I needed to get some drops. So I went to go to my bag, and my bag was behind all their grenade launchers and M16s. So I'm having to like move their M16s and grenade launchers to unzip my bag and get my drops out. It was just very different, doing a military charter. So, and then after that, we went to Amsterdam, and then we flew on our sister airline at the time was KLM. So we flew KLM back, but I was in Amsterdam for a while, and so I just hung out and played video games.
It's a lot of experience.
Didn't get to see much of Europe, but that was about it.
That's a lot of experience going through that, especially going on a 747, empty 747. Never knew that because 747 was so common of an airline. When I was born, it wasn't. I was starting to retire. The plane was starting to go out of business, but now it's completely gone.
Yeah, we had the 747 400s. So they're the ones that have the extended upper cabin and they have the winglets. Yeah, and then on that 400 we had like they had a crew cab. So basically up there you took a ladder and went up to this ladder, and then they actually had sleeping booths. So when I did flights to Hong Kong, we would go up and sleep in those cabins because they were longer than 14 hours. It was like 14 hours and something, and anything longer than that, then we had to be allotted rest per our union.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, very good. What was it like working as a loadmaster for Alaska Airlines?
That was super fun. I loved it. That was probably honestly my favorite job I've ever done in my life because every day was different. You're constantly surrounded by airplanes and big jets. Your cargo is different. So if you want to get into it, I wouldn't go into baggage. If you ever want to work for the airlines, don't go into baggage, go into cargo. because cargo, like I said, some days we're moving like famous movie sets or movie equipment. Sometimes we're shipping little miniature horses. Sometimes we're shipping big horses. Sometimes we're shipping motorcycles, like nice Harley Davidsons. For Alaska Airlines, we did a lot of fish, a lot of crab, a lot of that type of thing. And one time I was out delivering some things, riding my little truck out on the tarmac, and my other buddy was in his truck, and he turned a little too sharp, and he was pulling some pallets with some big crab pots, like big. They're like this, at least this, like that's one side of it. It's like these big, huge square things full of crab. And when he turned, the pot went and tipped, and this is at Seattle Airport, tipped onto the ground and hit the tarmac, and it was a hot summer day. And these cold crab hit the tarmac, woke up, and started skittering around. And we had like two big airliners. One I know was a 757, like sitting there with its engine spinning, just like almost maybe 25 to 50 yards from us, just waiting for us as we scrambled around to pick up all this crab and put it back in the bin and try to get this heavy bin back upright so we could get it back. But so just things like that were kind of fun and exciting, and just every day being different. But it didn't pay a lot, so that's why I didn't stick with it. So I actually went from that to being a carpet cleaner, because carpet cleaning paid a lot more money, but it was still probably the funnest job I've ever done.
Incredible. And how do you see the future of working in aviation?
I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think it's always they're always going to need, humans, even though a lot of things have become automated and stuff like that. Like these planes now, like when I was there, many times the pilots would come and tell us this is a hands-off landing, because they have FAA, riding in front. So the FAA would check certain things, and one of them was a hands-off landing. It's literally where they just set the plane to land itself. And so they want to make sure that the pilot knows how to kick it off and start that sequence, and the plane literally just lands itself. So, so things are automated, but you're just always going to need, because of things that can fail and through, history and stuff like that, you're going to need people to be able to do things. Same things with the service side of it, as well as the a lot of the, like in cargo, the stuff that we did mostly, a lot of cargo is automated, right? But what we did, which made it fun, is we did the one-off things. So I would be transferring stuff from Alaska Airlines to Northwest Airlines, or from Alaska Airlines to Delta. They have things that go through different airlines. And so in cargo, you're constantly dealing not only with different airplanes, different items, but you're dealing with different airlines, which is fun.
So, okay.
Yeah, you get to meet people from all over, and the Postal Service and FedEx. So you deal with all of those things. When you just one job in cargo, you'll be dealing with everybody after a while.
Wow.
So.
Well, very
What
good.
advice would you give to a person who wants to go in aviation?
Well, there's a lot of ways to go, but I would say if you're really interested, you could learn about the Civil Air Patrol, which is a way that someone his age can actually start getting involved with airplanes, and you'll be doing different events. Like, for instance, the Civil Air Patrol, when they do the air show out here in Stewart, it's the Civil Air Patrol that will be there helping people park, helping people do those type of things. It's those kids, and they wear uniforms. So sometimes it looks like military, or they look like they're ROTC. They're not. They're Civil Air Patrol. So you can look into that, and that's a good way to get involved in flying and start getting lessons and learning about it. A lot of people that I knew in the industry, I knew flight attendants that would commute by flying. So they wanted to be pilots, but they were flight attendants. So in order to become a pilot, you need to accumulate a lot of hours, right, of experience. So what they would do is say they lived in Minnesota, right, but they were based as flight attendants out of Detroit. So they would fly from Minnesota to Detroit, park their plane, go do their trip as a flight attendant, get back in their little airplane and fly back to to Minnesota. And sometimes you can rent those planes, like they didn't own them. Sometimes they would buy airplanes. Airplanes are not as expensive as you think because of the strict requirements to keep those airplanes up. You can find airplanes from the 60s that run perfectly, and they sell them for as much as you could buy a car, but they're just expensive because you have to keep up the maintenance and you have to keep up that type of thing. But buying them is not expensive, and plus you have to store them somewhere, so that kind of costs. But if you can afford those things, and some people can on a flight attendant salary, they would just do it because that's how they were planning to learn. Some people go into other type of things like I knew people that fueled airplanes. People that were mechanics that wanted to become pilots. So it seems like a lot of people being a pilot is kind of their goal. So just being involved around the industry will get you there. And then if you're really focused, then there's schools like Embry-Riddle and things like that will take you from, it's basically college. They'll take you and give you a degree in aviation, which includes like a commercial pilot's license and stuff like that. So I had a boss so I got in the computer industry. After a while, I worked as a developer at Microsoft, and so I worked in computers. But one of my managers was a pilot, and he went to Embry-Riddle and got his degree, and he was still a pilot. He would just work as a manager for this computer company, software company on the weekdays, and then on the weekends he would be a Learjet charter. So he'd fly the little Learjets around. So either way, you're going to have to get your hours. So a lot of people get their hours by chartering planes or by ferrying planes. So like people buy and sell planes all the time, and they don't want to go and fly somewhere and fly that plane there. So there's people that want to get hours, and so they'll go and they will work for a company that ferries these planes, and they're when they're ferrying these planes all over the country, they're accumulating their hours. So they'll ferry a plane from, say, like Florida to New York, and then they're flying the plane to New York by themselves. So they just fly to deliver the plane, and then they take an airline back, or they ferry a different plane back, But they do that to kind of
get their hours. Yeah,
Some
I think
people
it's 24,000 or something.
right,
like that.
and then some people become instructors to get their hours. Some people, become crop dusters. I knew pilots that were crop dusters. Some people go into the military, to get their hours. But if you just love airplanes, you can be around airplanes. You don't have to be a pilot. Sometimes being a pilot and a flight attendant is kind of you get so used to flying all the time that it kind of the excitement isn't there anymore. And so, but the jobs like working in cargo or working on the ground as a mechanic or things like that are exciting because you do your job and then you have those benefits of being able to fly. Like when I was a flight attendant, I could basically go anywhere I wanted for really cheap. So, but I was so tired of flying as a flight attendant that on the weekends or on the times I had off, I didn't want to go back and fly somewhere. It's kind of like working at McDonald's and going like, hey, where do you want to go eat? Not McDonald's.
So
like I worked there.
You were going a lot.
So I was flying a lot. Yeah. So you fly a lot. And when you start out, if you're a flight attendant, you start out as a junior flight attendant, so you're on call. So you're getting a lot of people's schedules, not your own schedule. You're basically on call. So I'd be in a movie and my phone would go off and be like, you have to be at the airport in an hour. So I'd literally have to rush home, leave the movie, shower, get my clothes, pack my bags, and be flying to who knows where, Hong Kong, Tokyo.
So it was harder with your family life.
It was hard, and I that's one reason why they say after 4 years, people never quit, because after 4 years, it's almost like you can choose your own schedule, so it's like you can kind of work your life around it, and it becomes too attractive, and I didn't want to be a flight attendant for the rest of my life, so for me it was like, at the 4-year mark, I was like, okay, I need to go. It was right about that time I was senior enough that I could start bidding on a schedule and holding my own schedule. And before that, so all 4 years of my flight attendant, I was what's called a reserve flight attendant. But you get to fly a lot because people call in sick constantly, and you're constantly needed to fill in places. But you're kind of a lone person. So what that means is that I would, like some of these flight attendants, they fly the same flights all the time because that's what they choose. But as a reserve flight attendant, I would always be what's called an add-on. So I would go and like someone gets sick on a flight or something happens in a tragedy and someone needs to leave the flight. I would be called to, they would fly me from Seattle to, Atlanta, and then I would have to get onto a flight that they're missing a flight attendant. And I would just be that flight attendant for them for the trip. So, and that was fun. I mean, I flew so much to Hawaii from when I was based in Seattle. I flew so often to Hawaii. I won their duty-free contest.
Wow.
So the contest that flight attendants have to sell duty-free items on their plane, like I, as a Seattle flight attendant, beat all the Hawaii-based flight attendants and won their contest because that's how often I was flying out to Hawaii and flying those trips. So
Wow.
yeah, so you get to fly, you get to travel the world, you get to see a lot of things, but sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so great. Like I've been to Puerto Rico.
Really? Wow.
I've been to Puerto Rico. Have I stepped off the plane? No. because of we were there such a short time that I didn't even have time to see anything. You know what I mean? So it's like I had to stay on the plane because if I got off the plane, then I would have to produce my visa and go through customs and do all that thing to go see the country. So they're just like, no, just stay on the plane for 5 hours and then wait for the next people to come. So you're just sitting there, So anyway, that was kind of my experience, but it was wonderful. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah. Well, there you go, guys. Your little interview. Hearing people that work in aviation really warms my heart because you don't see a lot of people work in aviation. I mean, I've seen videos of people working as a pilot, but it's not that common to see. Like a brother or a member in the board works in aviation for so much time. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview with Brother Clark. You probably will like this interview with somebody that works in aviation. And I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you the next one. Bye. Peace.